Cool. All right. Tell us who you are and what you do.
All right. My name is Bryan Srabian, and my title is Vice President Digital Media and Brand Development. But I've been overseeing the Giants' social media for the last, I guess this is the 9th season. So I started doing that in 2010. We are now completing the 2018 season.
Yep.
So I started back with 3,000 Twitter followers on our Giants Twitter account and 300,000 Facebook likes, and now the Giants have, I don't know, let's call it 7 million, something like that total, with all the Snapchat, Instagram, all those fun ones.
Yeah, so what are all the platforms you guys are on now?
Well, gosh, we're on a lot of platforms.
Yeah.
But the ones we focus on, let's call them the Mount Rushmore, if you will. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. That's what we spend the most time on. I mean, we have a LinkedIn account. We obviously, YouTube is, I guess we do use YouTube a lot, but that, for all intents and purposes, we won't call that social media, even though it is.
Yeah.
Pinterest is, something we use a little bit, but those 4 are really the ones that we focus on day in and day out. In-game content.
Okay. And how did you choose the Mount Rushmores?
It's really, I think, based on just engagement levels.
Okay.
Obviously, Twitter is your instant gratification, your news, your breaking news, the way you kind of cultivate your voice. Always has been. Doesn't have quite the breadth and reach that Facebook does, but without that algorithm, you tend to go and reach a wider audience. I think also your influencers are on there. Right. So that many people consider Twitter kind of, when you think about this, when you evaluate a brand's social media, you typically look at their Twitter account. I was just looking at Wendy's the other day, and Wendy's is kind of famous for being snarky. And, and I have no idea what their Facebook looks like. I don't know what their Instagram, but people will say, wow, they're really great on social media. But their Twitter account, Instagram is probably, I don't know if it's the most important, but it reaches that younger demographic. It's so powerful with video now. Definitely important to reach. The IGTV, which they just launched this year, we're still figuring that out. But video is definitely a powerful vehicle for us and for brands. Facebook is Facebook. We don't have to talk about that. But Snapchat's really the interesting one because it had such a big, I think, potential. And I think, there are a lot of young users on it. They're very avid. But it just really got its legs cut off by Instagram. And that's just the business world. And they kind of copied a lot of their main traits. And we don't have the same numbers, but it's still a very active youthful group, so we still put some time into that, and there's still some fun things that you can do on there.
So what are some of the things that you do on Snapchat that might be different than Instagram?
Okay, so let's talk about Instagram stories versus Snapchat, because that's really the comparison. I think Snapchat just has more of that kind of the fun, more light feeling, and you're doing more of the stickers and animations on there. You might not be as focused on kind of game action as more of kind of the lighter side. And I think, you have someone who uses it more often than others, using doodles, using different things that kind of have more of a comedic feel to it. And I think Instagram stories, maybe a little bit more on the beauty of the pictures and the video. And I think the tone it's still light, but not as light as Snapchat. And Snapchat's very raw in the moment. I think Instagram Stories is also feeling that, but I think we try to even skew a little bit younger on Snapchat.
Right. So if I could go 2 ways from this, I'm going to go the other way. Tell us about how you got to this role, because I think when we were sitting at lunch, you came in as a contract back in 2010.
So, I mean, luck and it was luck and being at the right place, right time. Okay, so I started at the Giants. I didn't have internet access, so you guys can do the math. We'll call that mid-90s. It was a privilege to have the internet. It was kind of like, we compared it to like the Mad Men era when they would drink martinis for lunch. It's like, well, that's kind of what the internet was. You would waste 2 to 3 hours of your day, looking up fun things on the internet. But then when the website was kind of created, and I was in the marketing department, then I swerved over into the entertainment side. And when the ballpark opened in 2000, I was running all the video and music and the mascot activation side.
Got it.
I left the Giants in 2008, moved. And we'll just say 2 years later I was looking for a job. So 2010, the Giants said, "Hey Bryan, we heard you're interested in social media." And at the time I didn't have a job. And I'm like, "Oh, of course I'm interested in social media." But it's funny because when I left the Giants, I started a MySpace account for our mascot. Yeah, no one really saw it or used it, but everyone was like, "Wow, this MySpace is really amazing."
Yeah.
And then I remember Facebook, I wasn't on, my wife was on it, but Friendster and Dogster. So this social media thing was kind of picking up. It wasn't until, the job I had before, it was right before the recession and marketing budgets were getting cut, and our boss is like, "Figure out how to use social media, it's free." So you started to use Twitter as a way to, promote different things. And then, so I kind of started to see, okay, there's a way that sports teams are using this, and that's when my interest kind of peaked, and the Giants called and said, "Figure it out. Our brand, kind of the limitations we have on a Major League Baseball had some restrictions." So I started to work with our PR department on the structure for Twitter and also for Facebook, and those were the only 2 platforms we were allowed to use at the time. There was a few others, but we weren't allowed to use them for various reasons. And we had like maybe 15 different Facebook accounts and Twitter accounts within the Giants, every department. And so my job was to strategize, and I said, let's just have one voice speaking for the whole company, and that way everyone will know, we don't have 15 websites, we have one website. It makes a lot of sense now, but at the time it was just like, everyone was just kind of doing whatever. So there was no social media person or department or plan. So my job was to kind of figure that out. So as we went along, I started to do that. So 2010, I did that. Then I started to kind of look at what other teams were doing, other brands were doing. We talked about Wendy's. I mean, it was developing that voice. And you start to develop a voice, and you start talking to people, and people were really kind of shocked that, wow, at SF Giants said happy birthday to me, or they answered my question, or they did a joke. That's kind of cool. There's a human there. And that was just all kind of, you saw that, the reaction that like, this is, we're so used to this broadcast vehicle. We would just say, hey, the game starts at 7:15, buy tickets. Now we're like saying, hey Leilani, how was the game? Did you, we saw it was your birthday. Hope you had a great one. You know, we'd love to send you a free hat, stuff like that. And that was mind-blowing at the time.
It became a customer service platform.
It was a whole, it was a whole new world, a whole new way to engage, and that's that whole word, engagement. So, and then, 2010, 2011, in fact, the end of 2010, we're just footsteps away from the original Instagram building. I met with someone from Instagram. There were 4 employees. I guess I could have been employee number 5 and I wouldn't be sitting here right now. But instead, he convinced me to open a Giants Instagram account. So we were the first MLB team on Instagram.
Interesting.
Wasn't sure what we were going to use it for, but I knew it was a cool platform because I was using it on my personal side. But what do we do? And it was just a lot of pictures, and it wasn't video at the time, but it was just, and it was not so much about what you said as the photo kind of spoke for itself, but there was a pretty growing group of people that did Insta walks, and San Francisco was very forward thinking about Instagram, so we jumped on that early, and that was kind of fun too.
Insta walks.
Yeah.
I don't even know what Insta walks are.
So an Insta walk, this was like, there was a community of like photographers that they'd say, hey, let's go to this park, and they'd throw it out there and they go, let's all meet, and they came up with a hashtag, and they all just took pictures and created these galleries. It was kind of an organic thing, but like Instagram had like a person that would just kind of get people involved with that. So they found, then they started getting more popular and said, oh, let's do the Louvre, and let's do Times Square, and let's do this church over in, so you try to find different architectural things. I think we did one a long time ago with the ballpark when no one was there. And instead of telling them, they found what was interesting and engaging, and it might have, you think this beautiful park and the view was great, and they'd say, no, we love the way that the grass looks here, or the seat is a very interesting, and so it was just a different way, and that's, I think, how they built that Instagram community before it became, let's take selfies of each other. It was more about finding photography and finding beauty in different everyday things of life. So that was an interesting kind of way and how everything's kind of evolved. So
cool. That's awesome. I didn't know that. Looking at social media from a personal brand perspective and a corporate brand perspective, how are the voices different? How do you utilize each platform differently? It's
interesting. I think, in the beginning, when we were kind of climbing, you were a lot more, or at least we were, the Giants were a lot more personable. And then I think as you gain, 1 million plus people here, the media starts picking up on things. You have some success. I think we kind of buttoned up a little bit and weren't as edgy, and maybe we, it's always that fine line. But I think the main thing is, from a brand perspective, you got to stay on brand and try to. But social media allowed you to kind of explore those limits and remember that sports is an emotional game, and you're kind of matching the emotions of your fan base. So if it's a high level situation, trying to match that. Where I think people have kind of gotten into trouble is the quote unquote trolling of fans and of other teams, or saying something inappropriate. And I think from a personal standpoint, you have to remember you're representing a brand, and it's not just you trying to be funny or be a comedian and trying to gain, success that way. On your personal side, I think, it's whatever, there's people that are big self-promoters, and you got to kind of, I think, and remember, you might have multiple people running your Twitter account, so you're trying to have a voice that matches what that's being said. There was an article this week, and it was about the NFL Twitter accounts, and I think now there's more than half of the NFL team accounts are run by a female, which was kind of interesting since the majority of their fans are obviously male, or not obviously, but traditionally, and if you look at stats, but how social media is kind of changing that. There's a lot of females in marketing and sports, and specifically social media. But I think the key was that a lot of fans can't tell if it's male or female, or they make assumptions, and they'd be shocked to hear that a female was running it. And I think that's a really good thing to have, where you don't know. I've been accused of being a 22-year-old before, and I'm twice that age, so I take that as a badge of honor when it's like, oh no, I'm a dad, I have kids, but thank you very much. I do listen to Drake, so if you drop a Drake lyric here or there, that gives you some street cred. So I think that brand voice is important, but even more important is after cultivating that voice, if you're so dependent on one person, and you have multiple people sharing as you grow, or whatever, and some can get away with that because they have small teams, but as you grow, that voice everyone has to kind of adopt, and some will be better than others. But that's why writing is so important, especially in social media, and thinking on your feet, and being really in touch with your community, your fan base, and also your brand, and kind of being able to, because it's not like you write something and get it edited down and passed and approved. It's fast. It's on the you got to be on the cusp and put it out there. And sometimes you take a risk, but knowing how far to go and what your brand is and what the voice is really helps you with that.
Can you give us an example of going too far?
Sure. Whether it's the Giants or I'm not going to say anything that we've done. Somebody else. We really haven't gone too far, although, but the one of the famous stories that pokes into my head is the NBA has been known to kind of take some shots at each other. In fact, the one year I think it was the Rockets versus the Mavericks in the playoffs, and everyone knows the Mavericks mascot is a horse. And the Rockets, we got a pretty deep-heated rivalry in Texas with those two teams. And the Rockets beat them, and the gentleman posted a picture, an emoji of a horse head and a gun. And he thought it was funny, and some people thought it was funny, but it took a lot of backlash. In fact, they took the gun out of the emojis. You can't. There's a water gun now, not a real gun. And that got a huge backlash, and it was maybe something that went a little too far. Some would argue that it was just, an emoji and it was kind of fun and it's for the fans. But, I think that's kind of the point, is that, well, because there was backlash, I don't think, and he obviously didn't mean anything by that. He was just trying to be funny and thought it was just kind of, tongue in cheek. But he lost his job, unfortunately. But then he tried to sell T-shirts with the emojis on it. I don't know how he's doing. I mean, he's a really. I don't know him, but everything I've read about him says he's just a really smart, funny guy.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he made a mistake, but obviously he paid the price for that, and you can argue. And I think that's really the tough thing is that fans can be ruthless. You make a grammar, the your police, the Y-O-U-R versus Y-O-U-R-E apostrophe, which I've done a handful of times.
Yeah.
They will jump on you. They tell you to fire the intern. You do anything that's kind of, but then if you just stay too close to the edge, then you're boring, and people, you got to figure out what you are. What is social media? And I feel, based on your brand, we're entertainment. We're trying to keep people connected. There's a lot of competition for our own brand. Let's just look at the Giants.
Yeah.
If you watch a Giants game, you've got CSN or NBC Sports Bay Area. You've got Bleacher Report sometimes. You've got all these writers. You've got a lot of sources to get your information. So what is at us at Giants? What are we adding that no one else is doing? What are we doing to get you closer to be a fan? And we have fans all over, not just the country, but the world, and we've got different ages, and we've got different demographics. So we're trying to kind of figure that out. But you develop that voice in an entertaining and fun way. It's really hard for us right now. We're having a losing season. Fans aren't happy, or they're disengaged, or kind of moving to football. But what do we do for the fans that are engaged, and how do we continue to build? And there's going to be an active off season, and trying to come up with that plan. So it doesn't really stop. And I think the other thing is your strategy continues to evolve in different ways. So, I think going too far could be a number of things. It could be using choice language. It could be, we try not to be negative, even with other teams. We try to stay positive. When rivals kind of take shots at us, we almost take it as like it's a positive, because they only take shots at the ones at the top, not at the bottom. So, but we try to stay focused on our fans. But it's a good discussion. What is too far? What should you do that's fun or edgy versus boring? And I think those discussions are good, and they should happen all the time, not just once a year, not just hey, but it comes from a buy-in of whoever's trusting your brand. Who's sending emails out? What's your marketing agency? Is your CEO on board? Because you're essentially representing the organization. Because when something bad happens, you're putting a press release out from your team account. People are looking at it. So you're essentially speaking on behalf of the organization. And you've got to remember that at all times.
It's a big responsibility.
It really is.
We were talking about Reddit earlier during lunch.
Yeah, we were.
Can you dive a little bit more on utilizing Reddit?
So Reddit is, we actually have an official account. For those of you who don't know Reddit, the easiest way to explain it is a lot of people call it the front page of the internet. So a lot of those funny memes that you find are funny come from Reddit. These people are like professional people on Reddit. Like so you follow your little topic boards. You can follow politics. You can follow SF Giants. You can follow the Beastie Boys. They helped me get tickets to their book tour on November 5th. Very excited about that. But it's a very active and engaged space, and you have a lot of fans. I find it the most interesting thing for me is we will post things there for other people to take and post elsewhere, but it's more about reading kind of what their thought process is. What is the pulse of your brand, of your team? They'll post different articles, and then the comments below it will then be an interesting kind of debate. So if you don't have 3 hours a day or a $50,000 budget to, find the sentiment of your brand, you can get onto Reddit and just read what are people talking about, what are they even interested in. You can find cross sections of information, like, okay, Giants fans are also interested in this movie or this topic or this event. You can go into San Francisco and to see what are people of San Francisco talking about, what events are they going to, in case we wanted to connect with them some way. So to me, I find Reddit is a really wealth of personal information for just interesting topics that you find personally. But from a professional standpoint, I see having it's small in size compared to your others, but I feel like the people on there are so engaged with your brand.
Right.
And by doing just things, promotions with them, and being engaged in that community, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
I'm very pro Reddit. It's very underutilized.
Do you think that the way that you look at social media or utilize it is different because you're in San Francisco versus someone who might be running accounts for a team in Orlando or a team in the middle of
Yes
Timbuktu?
and no. I think it's an interesting question. I think in the beginning it was, I think San Francisco, and probably was because these companies are here and because people are so into their phones, are a little bit more active in social media.
Right.
So there was maybe an earlier buy-in to it than other markets, but I also think that there's a lot more competition here too. So if you're in Orlando, there's, you're the Orlando Magic. You don't have other sports teams, other entities kind of buying for your time.
Right.
Attention span is really our currency. We're going for that attention span.
Right.
So I think in some ways we do, and when and you got to tap into that. The whole topic of influencers and how to utilize influencers is an interesting topic.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of influencers here.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of who do you want to, there's so many influencers that they might cancel each other out, versus in those markets, the influencers probably have a little bit more breath to talk to their audience. So I think it's just more about scale. But if I was to move to another market, I'd probably use a lot of the same tactics I'm using, but maybe I would get to know the community, see what moves them, who's active. Things I have to think that some communities are much more active on social media than others, and you tap into that, whereas there might be more opportunities in untapped markets in a way. So I think it's both. It goes both ways. But San Francisco is very it's an active community. Fans are engaged, brands are engaged. There's a lot of platforms and software that you can look at and talk to. So there's never a dull day. That's for sure.
Oh, San Francisco. If somebody wants to break into a social media role, what would you suggest?
That's a good question. I get that a lot. The opportunity is there for you to kind of, I guess, not just make a name for yourself, but to connect with the right people. I almost feel like it's becoming so specialized now. It's kind of like you can't just say I want to work in social media. What is that specialty? Are you a graphic design artist and you make graphics that really? Are you a motion artist that the videos are working well?
Right.
I mentioned this earlier, but writing is just so important. So, I might ask, what do you think is doing well on social media? I might ask, what would you do for the Giants differently? I think if you truly do want to break in, you got to study kind of what's out. And that's the beauty of social media. It's all out there.
Yeah.
Like I can just say something about the Giants account, and you can go and look at it and rate it and critique it and say, I would have done this, and look what the Dodgers have done, look what the Yankees have done. Have you thought of this? I think the ability for you to create your own brand online is a positive one. I mean, you have the ability to write a blog, to connect with people on LinkedIn or Twitter, but I think there's a lot of opportunities to help charities, schools, church groups, local, whatever you're invested in your community. You could probably help them in social media. And I think by helping them, it helps you kind of shape like, I don't have experience running a big brand, but I ran our school had an auction, and I put together a social media campaign, and I think I could scale this up, but here's the components that I did, and I borrowed this after what I saw another charitable organization do, and I didn't have the budget or the time, but I created something. So I think that's also another option, is just look around, because a lot of the nonprofits need your help regardless. And if you come in there and say, hey, I'd love to help you with your social media, and I'll do it pro bono, I'm just trying to get some experience, sell yourself and give you that experience. So I think that's another option. Or just make a mock campaign. Say, hey, the Giants, here's what I would do. And I kind of created a fake Twitter account, a fake to kind of show you. Now, how do you get in front of that person? That's another story. But I wouldn't worry about that. I would worry about just building your portfolio, your experience, and getting to know people in a non-ask way. Meaning, don't come to me and say, hey, can I work for the Giants? Get a job. Be like, I really admire your work. Flattery works, and I'd love to pick your brain, and I have 5 questions I want to email you, and
Right.
is there someone I could talk to? Is there a book I could read? I really, try to connect with people, try to show interest, and those job opportunities might come up, when you least expect it. So
Yeah.
don't try to close early, but try to make a name for yourself, try to make those connections, and try to get that hands-on experience.
Right. Where do you see social media going in the next 6 months to the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, it's really going to be dependent on, I guess, iPhone has a big deal to do with it as cameras continue to develop,
Right.
and Samsung's too. Facebook and what the future for them holds. Obviously, spending money in advertising because people are on Facebook. I think the growth has kind of stopped. Like I think they've reached everyone they can reach. So now,
Right.
what is it that they can do?
Yeah.
And keep people interested. A lot of people talk about the, and I'm forgetting how we term this, but private messaging, WhatsApp, Messenger. People are using these things, over text messages. They're using Snapchat privately, obviously. That there's a whole new movement going there. It'll be really interesting. I have kids 12 and 10 and 5, and that generation, they're being raised on social media. Are they going to fight back and say, like, we're tired of being shown on Facebook and we're done with this, we're going to go back to analog and writing? So it's hard to say. If I knew exactly, I would probably be moving there, but I think you've got to stay connected to macro trends, especially in the financial markets, but also you can kind of tell based on your own eyeballs what's moving and what's not. Where are the trends? I definitely think esports and e-gaming is an industry that's moving quickly, and it's based on social media. So I think the social media is still going to play an influence. In fact, it might play a more influential way in how our media and entertainment is shaped. So instead of using established brands like baseball and football to help you, you're almost creating brands out of social media based on it. So I don't think it's going away anywhere soon, but it's definitely going to change and evolve as we mature beyond the next few years. So it will be interesting.
So we read an article in this class about there being cameras being run by one person. So it's all not AI, but it's all robotic, and so you're monitoring all these cameras of a game through one control room. So there's no human behind the camera anymore. Do you think that that's ever going to take place with social media?
It's funny. It's
with algorithms and things
we've got virtual reality is really the first kind of put you in that experience. You want to be at center court at a Warriors game. You can wear a headset and be there, and that's interesting to some, but I don't think it's really taken off. I don't know. I mean, I think the AI and all that stuff is fascinating, and there is going to be. I don't know what the answer is. Augmented reality is interesting. I think our job is twofold. It's to try to get you to come to a game because there really is nothing to replace that live. And we're using social media at games, but it's really that live experience. But if you're not there, how do we make you feel like you're there? And I think that's what you're talking about, and that's where and that'll be kind of interesting to see. How is social media connecting people? Watching a game at home, how does it bring them closer? How is it? How are media companies using it to connect with people? And there's a lot of different things being thrown against the wall, expensive things. And I think it's just a matter of the fan. I mean, to me, I don't want to wear a mask or a headset. I want to sit and watch, and some people want to watch it on their phone and watch 3-minute segments and watch the highlights. Some people don't like commercials. Well, no one likes commercials, but they will sit and watch a game if it's recorded. And so everyone's different, and I think it's really a segmented audience. How do you watch your games and consumption? I don't know. It's interesting. We had rugby at our park recently, and this Rugby 7 is an offshoot, and it's 20-minute games, and it's a lot of people say that's more suited towards this generation. It's just like 20 minutes in the game. It's fast action. There's no timeouts. It's just over versus a 2-hour, 3-hour game with commercials and stop time.
Right.
Things are different. My kids they watch some sports, but they love the live sports, but they'll watch video games and video gamers because they're into that.
Yeah.
And that might have a bigger impact on sports than we even know.
Yeah.
So.
Very interesting. Anything else that we didn't cover that you'd want to share? They should know.
I guess some of the one question I get a lot is what you asked, what's the best way to break into sports or social media? And I just think that now is a great time if you're interested to, look at emerging brands. Look at the Golden State Warriors moving into a new arena.
Right.
Look at women's sports specifically. I think there's just a huge growth there.
Yeah.
And then I think the biggest is, I mentioned esports, but there's so many kind of, we'll call them niche sports. I mean, there's this Big Three basketball that Ice Cube created. There's all these little offshoots of sports that are building communities. Wrestling is kind of an area that's interesting to me. I grew up watching professional wrestling, but the way they use social media and the way that they've leveraged it because they have such a strong following.
Right.
I say look at some of these that are successful.
Right.
Look at music acts and music groups and just kind of see where things are going, and I think you will find these new opportunities. LeBron James, he's a few years into his Uninterrupted, which is kind of a competitor to the Players Tribune, which is player-driven media, but we're seeing this whole shift away from the media to personal athletes, to brands, and I think there's just this huge opportunity now. San Francisco is a great opportunity. Los Angeles has a great opportunity. The media landscape has changed. Video games is growing. Sports continues to grow. There's new opportunities everywhere you look. So it's a really good time. And then you look at things like Bleacher Report, The Ringer, all these different brands that are, not your traditional media companies that are growing because of social media. Podcasting has kind of been a way of life, but what's the next podcasting? What's next in terms of social media? Those are all things that are all happening as we speak right now. So I say to you, get on social media. You don't necessarily have to tweet or Instagram, but you got to be connected. You got to see where are the movers and shakers, where are the trends going, and that's how you kind of stay in the game. Yeah.
I guess a question I do want to ask is, if you're a coach, how should they utilize social media?
Well, I mean, coaching is interesting because you got to. This is the way that your kids are communicating. I think, like anything, you've got to teach them. What they're saying now could be used against them 10 years from now, but you also have to teach them that this is part of the new world. And you are now, once you are representing anything, especially yourself, but you're representing a school, you've got to be in there and understand it. I think taking it away from them might be a mistake, but that's their decision because it could be a distraction, and many times it is. But I think it's also a way for coaches to understand, and especially if they're recruiting and they want to connect with their athletes, what they're doing and how they communicate. And I think the first step is for them to just understand it. And if they decide to take it away, that's their decision, and it might be the right one, the wrong one, I don't know. But I think understanding what it is first before you do anything, and understand that this is not a fad, it's not going away, and more students, and learn from the mistakes that are being made as we speak. How can you prevent them? How can you teach as opposed to just banning? But I think it's a great opportunity for especially younger coaches who are really into social media, Twitter especially, to recruit and to connect with students that others don't have that aptitude.
That's great advice. I think that's it, unless you have any final words.
No, if you guys want to find me on Twitter, that's usually where I'm at Srabe, S-R-A-B-E. I'm happy to connect with anyone there, but don't connect with me on LinkedIn because it's a mess. Boy, that place is a mess.
Really?
It is. Just a lot of self-promotion, a lot of salespeople. I don't even know who I'm connected to anymore. I try to go in there and clean up. I don't like red dots anywhere, so I just accept things and look at things and move on, but it's a lot of sales stuff. So
I think
Twitter's a good way.
People actually utilized it as another social media piece and weren't just promoting themselves, it could be a really great tool.
It is. And there's some good people doing some good things on there, but there's a lot of noise, and I don't have the time for it but that's just me. Everyone has their thing. I like Reddit, I like Twitter, I go on Instagram once in a while. Facebook I'm on and off. But obviously for the Giants, I'm connected to our brands, and I need
Right.
to know not just what we're doing, but I need to know what's trending. So you have to spend time to look at the overall landscape. So
Yeah. Cool.
I got a lot of screens. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
That's why you need to float. But cool.
All right.
All right, that's
Thank
it.
you for the conversation.
Thank you.
All right. What a nice day to do this.